The tycoon deliberately invited the black housekeeper to a luxurious party with the intention of humiliating her in front of everyone. He saw her as nothing more than a joke. Everyone was waiting for the moment she appeared, and when she walked in, all the guests were utterly shocked to discover her true identity. Before we continue, I would like to know where in the world you are watching this story from. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe so you never miss out on inspiring and impactful stories like this one. The grand ballroom of the Thorne Estate in Willow Creek, New York, erupted in cruel laughter as Lena Caldwell descended the ornate staircase, adorned in a gown more opulent than what most individuals in the room accrued in an entire year. Their mirth was not born of admiration, it was vicious mockery. "Behold who dared to grace us with her presence," Victor Thorne whispered to his guests, raising a glass of vintage champagne. "Our humble little maid." At 38, Lena had never conceived she would one day enter that hall as anything but unseen assistance, even if solely for a malicious prank. For 3 arduous years, she had meticulously cleansed every nook of this residence, always unnoticed, always silent. She had observed the affluent fawning over one another with feigned smiles, then treating her as an inanimate object. The invitation had arrived a few days prior, extended with that familiar sneer. "Charity ball this Saturday," Victor had stated, pressing a gilded envelope into her palm. "Dress code, ultra-formal. I'm certain you possess something suitable in your wardrobe." His friend's laughter resonated through the corridor. It was unmistakably a setup, a public debasement orchestrated for New York's elite society. Victor had even summoned reporters to chronicle this enlightening occasion. "Care to wager?" Victor murmured to his wife, Eleanor, while Lena vacuumed the day before. 200,000, she responded, her eyes glinting with cruelty. "She won't dare show. And if she does, it'll be the peak entertainment of the evening." Eleanor chuckled, relishing his depravity. "You're truly wicked, Victor. She'll have to borrow a dress from someone, and you'll witness her fleeing within 10 minutes. But Victor Thorne was oblivious to 2 critical facts about Lena Caldwell. Firstly, she had matured within grand residences, precisely like this one, long before circumstance forced her to cleanse them for survival. Secondly, some tempests do not shatter a person. They merely instruct them on how to ascend with greater fortitude. Lena accepted the golden invitation with astounding serenity, her resolute gaze betraying no uncertainty. "I'll be there," she softly articulated. In that precise instant, the mocking smirk on Victor's countenance flickered and extinguished. He swiftly regained his composure, confident she could not possibly withstand the duress of his exclusive echelon. What he failed to grasp was that Lena had been meticulously preparing for this momentous night. She recognized that this constituted her singular opportunity to unveil the painful truths of the past, the truths Victor had interred for 25 years. Behind Lena's placid demeanor resided a daring strategy poised to transform his cruel jest into his irreversible ruin. When Lena stepped into that magnificent hall on Saturday evening, she would transcend being merely a cleaning woman. She would champion justice and compel everyone to acknowledge the grave error they had committed in underestimating her. On Saturday evening, the crystal chandeliers in the Thorne Estate's grand hall blazed like constellations, their luminescence dancing across the polished marble floor. The city's elite began their arrival in lavish attire, their smiles flawlessly refined, even as their gazes silently appraised one another. Victor Thorne stood alongside his wife Eleanor, a fine wineglass clasped in hand, and a glimmer of cruel exhilaration in his eyes. Eleanor touched his shoulder and whispered, her tone frigid and derisive. "Do you imagine she'll genuinely appear, or did she experience a moment of apprehension?" Victor emitted a sneering laugh, pride swelling within his chest. "Someone of her ilk cannot resist the prospect of entering this realm, even if it's solely for humiliation. Trust me, she'll be here." At that precise moment, a soft footfall resonated from the pinnacle of the staircase. Conversation ceased mid-sentence. The atmosphere grew dense with anticipation. Then Lena Caldwell appeared, descending the stairs as if navigating the most elegant runway. Her floor-length crimson gown radiated grace and sophistication, far surpassing anything the guests anticipated. Her cascading curls were swept into an intricate updo, and delicate sapphire earrings captured the light illuminating her face. Lena moved with slow, deliberate strides, composed yet commanding. Her heart fiercely throbbed, though she exhibited no indication of apprehension. But the instant the throng recognized her, polite smiles dissolved into overt derision. A sharp guffaw echoed, followed by a chorus of malicious cackles. "Oh my God, look at her!" "How pathetic," exclaimed Brenda Sterling, a blonde woman. "She must have expended an entire month's earnings on that dress," sneered Richard Vance, a middle-aged man. Victor turned to Eleanor, delight flashing in his eyes at Lena's discomfort. Eleanor offered a soft, cruel smile. "Grant her a few minutes. She won't endure." What most astonished Victor was Lena's serene confidence. She did not waver under their jeers. Instead, she continued down the stairs with pride and resolve. Her gaze remained fixed on Victor, as if conveying a silent admonition. A chill coursed down Victor's spine. His smug smile stiffened. Doubt flickered in his mind, but his arrogance swiftly dispelled it. "She's feigning strength," he muttered to himself, endeavoring to steady his voice. "She'll soon comprehend her place." Eleanor glanced at Lena, observing the calm determination in her posture. Her brow furrowed. "Something's amiss, Victor." "She's excessively composed." Victor merely smirked. "Just await." Neither of them knew that Lena Caldwell was no facile prey. She had dedicated her life to anticipating this juncture. Their mocking laughter could no longer wound her. She had endured far more profound injuries. Each step Lena took down the staircase constituted a silent affirmation of her inner fortitude. Behind her elegant composure lay a meticulously crafted blueprint poised to unfold. Lena approached Victor and Eleanor and offered a gracious, enigmatic smile. Halting before Victor, she dipped into a polite curtsy, her eyes sharp enough to pierce his very soul. "Thank you for inviting me tonight, Mr. Thorne," she softly stated. "It truly is a magnificent occasion for us all to foster a deeper understanding of one another." Victor's frown deepened. Lena's utterances carried an unseen gravity he could not decipher. Before he could respond, she glided away into the crowd, leaving Victor and Eleanor in a sudden haze of perplexity. Guests still whispered, but their mocking laughter had given way to hesitant murmurs. No one could fathom how she remained so unperturbed. Victor stood rooted to the spot, his wineglass trembling ever so slightly. What he had intended as a cruel evening's diversion had transmuted into an unforeseeable event, one that left his heart drumming with disquiet. What he failed to realize was that tonight would not be the night Lena Caldwell fled in ignominy. On the contrary, it would signify the commencement of her grand design, one she had cultivated for years to overturn Victor Thorne's existence and transform the ruthless predator into the pursued under the vigilant eyes of Willow Creek's high society. Amid the curious, skeptical gazes of the guests, Lena Caldwell drifted through the throng as if she had perpetually belonged there. Her calm demeanor unsettled not only Victor and Eleanor, but sent quiet murmurs rippling throughout the room. Yet no one knew that beneath that serene exterior, painful memories were stirring, propelling Lena forward with greater resolve than ever before. In a secluded corner of the grand hall, Lena paused beside an antique table. Her finger instinctively traced the edge of the exquisite locket on her hand, a family heirloom set with an intricately engraved sapphire stone, the long-concealed emblem of the prestigious Thorne lineage. An emblem Victor had dedicated years to erasing from everyone's memory. None of these high society guests suspected that Lena Caldwell was no ordinary housekeeper. Before her life had been engulfed by darkness, she had been a member of this very affluent family. Her father, Arthur Thorne, had constituted the true influence behind the vast fortune Victor now inherited. More than 25 years ago, Lena had danced joyfully down these very corridors, her small footsteps echoing alongside her innocent laughter and her father's adoring smile. But that flawless existence shattered the day he perished under enigmatic circumstances. On that fateful day, Victor, her older half-brother, entered her life like a cruel shadow. Propelled by boundless avarice, he was determined to obliterate every vestige of Lena's genuine connection to the Thorne name. He stripped her of everything, wealth, status, even the cherished recollections of her happier past. He and her mother were cast out into destitution and disgrace. The locket Lena wore was her father's final bequest, the last memento of her true identity. For 25 years, she had safeguarded it like a precious secret, quietly anticipating the opportune moment to expose the truth Victor had so desperately hidden. Her crimson ball gown was no arbitrary selection either. It was the very garment her mother had worn to that last momentous gala as the matriarch of the Thorne household, a woman Victor had expelled from this privileged life, compelling her to endure society's cruelty until her dying breath. Every stitch in the gown reminded Lena of those profound wounds and of the weighty obligation she bore. Such a magnificent dress. She must have borrowed it for life, correct? A mocking voice pierced her thoughts. Lena turned to observe Cynthia Evans, the senator's wife, who invariably looked down upon her whenever she came to the estate. Lena offered a slight smile, her eyes flashing with a cold intensity Cynthia had never before witnessed. "Thank you for remarking, Mrs. Evans. In fact, this gown possesses a very distinctive narrative, one I believe would greatly astound you." Cynthia frowned in perplexity, disquieted by Lena's unfamiliar self-assurance. A distinctive narrative? What narrative could an inexpensive dress conceivably possess? Lena's smile never wavered. Her rejoinder was gentle, yet as keen as a blade. Sometimes the most crucial chapters of a family's chronicle reside in the custody of those everyone disregards. You would do well to remember that for soon you will need to comprehend it fully. Cynthia took an involuntary step back, unnerved by the ominous promise in Lena's tone. She swiftly spun away and re-entered the throng, her heart pounding with apprehension. Across the room, Victor and Eleanor observed the brief exchange with mounting discomfiture. Eleanor leaned toward her husband, her voice uncharacteristically uneasy. "Victor, what is she contriving? She's far too composed, far too peculiar." Victor shook his head, clinging to his arrogance for reassurance. "It's merely a performance. Lena possesses nothing. She's simply attempting to unsettle us, but she'll never substantiate a thing." Though Victor spoke with confidence, a deeper anxiety was stirring within him. The memories and truths he had labored to enter for decades were beginning to resurface, cornering him in a darkness he dared not confront. From her vantage point, Lena observed him and the assembled guests with serene intensity. She knew that these individuals, those who deemed themselves so superior, had no conception of the real past she held in her grasp. Now she was prepared to illuminate the darkest secrets, secrets potent enough to plunge Victor into the depths of despair and compel him to atone for the years of anguish he'd inflicted upon her and her mother. And Lena Caldwell understood that this momentous night was only just commencing. From the shadowed corner where Lena stood, her gaze remained serene as she watched Victor struggle to conceal the mounting unease within him. Noticing the brief flicker of hesitation on his face, Eleanor gently squeezed Victor's hand, as if to steady him, whispering in agitation, "Are you truly going to permit her to disrupt our gathering? You must act immediately." Victor curled the corner of his mouth into a forced smile, his voice chillingly sharp, yet betraying his instability. "Fret not, Eleanor. Let us observe how long she can maintain that calm facade." With that, Victor strode toward Lena, brimming with counterfeit confidence. His wealthy cronies, invariably eager to partake in his cruelties, flanked him like hyenas circling their quarry. "Lena, that dress is exquisite," Victor mocked, elongating the words for maximum derision. "I never imagined someone earning your recompense could afford such finery." His companions burst into laughter. Mr. Harrison, a towering middle-aged investment fund manager, chimed in. "Do you suppose she spent her entire life savings on that garment? Now that is dedication." Their cruel gazes fixated on Lena, awaiting her to crumble under their taunts. But to their astonishment, she did not flinch. Lena turned slowly, meeting Victor's gaze with frightening composure, a subtle knowing smile playing at her lips. "Thank you, Victor, and everyone for your solicitude. But you see, the true worth of a dress is not gauged by its cost, but by the narrative it carries. And believe me, this gown possesses a history you couldn't possibly conceive." Victor stiffened at her rejoinder. He had never witnessed Lena so poised, especially before such a formidable assembly. Her icy self-assurance felt like an invisible hand tightening around his heart. Martha Sullivan, a distinguished owner of a premier East Coast hotel chain, stepped forward with a sarcastic edge, attempting to regain control. "Oh, dear Lena, you articulate as if you've dwelled in our sphere. What could you possibly comprehend about opulence or the grand narratives of high society?" Lena faced Martha with unshaken poise, her eyes sharp as a blade. "Oh, I grasp it profoundly, Mrs. Sullivan. Sometimes those who presume to know everything are the ones who know nothing about the very individuals standing directly before them, like Victor Thorne here." Lena's words struck Victor's pride like a physical blow. He compelled himself to reply, his voice trembling with thinly veiled rage. "What are you insinuating, Lena?" She tilted her head slightly. Her mysterious smile caused hearts to flutter with a mixture of curiosity and dread. "I'm not insinuating anything, Victor. I'm merely articulating the truth, a truth I believe you know all too well." Silence descended instantaneously. The earlier laughter vanished, superseded by a stifling hush. Guests murmured among themselves, bewildered that a woman they had dismissed as inconsequential could remain so unruffled. Across the room, Eleanor's face drained of color as she observed her husband unravel. For the first time, she witnessed Victor lose control, a man renowned for his frigid power. She moved to his side, gripping his arm and whispering in a shaky voice, "Victor, are you well? I believe we should conclude this before it escalates too far." Victor shook off her hand, his tone brusque but laced with hidden panic. "She's only attempting to intimidate us. There's no way Lena possesses anything on us." Even as he spoke, an unsettling realization gripped him. The perilous game he had initiated was spiraling beyond his dominion. Across the glittering hall, Lena stood proud and composed, her eyes gleaming under the crystal lights, harboring a secret potent enough to shatter the world he had meticulously constructed. What had commenced as Victor and his circle's malicious taunt was now igniting a panic none of them could explain. Amid the crowd's startled, curious stares, Lena Caldwell raised her glass of wine to her lips and took a measured sip. She knew this was Victor's contest, but she would be the one to conclude it. And everyone here, those who had scoffed and looked down upon her, would soon comprehend they had prodded at a secret powerful enough to shake their trivial world to its core. Amid the suffocating silence that had fallen over the room, Lena slowly set her wineglass on the table, her eyes still locked on Victor. Her expression was calm, but beneath that serenity lay a power that only deepened his unease. Victor forced himself to cling to whatever vestige of composure he had left, but in the recesses of his mind, a small, insistent voice reminded him that his gravest fear was materializing. A low murmur of gossip began to ripple through the guests like restless undulations. Curiosity and perplexity shone on their faces as they endeavored to make sense of Lena's mysterious composure. A few glances flickered toward Victor as though they were awaiting him to offer an elucidation, but he stood firm even as turmoil churned beneath his facade. Lena drew in a steady breath, her face grave with resolve, and walked to the center of the room. The crystal lights above cast brilliant rays around her, rendering the moment almost surreal. "Ladies and gentlemen," Lena's voice rang out clear and commanding enough to silence the entire hall. "I believe it's time you learn the truth that Victor Thorne here has spent the last 25 years concealing from you." Victor took an involuntary step forward, his voice trembling with fear and anger. "Lena, don't utter absurdities. What are you attempting to achieve?" Lena met his stare with unshakable calm, her eyes as cold and steady as steel. "This contest, Victor, was initiated by you. But tonight, I will be the one to bring it to its conclusion." The guests held their breath, eyes riveted on Lena, hearts pounding with anticipation. Eleanor, pale as a phantom beside Victor, clenched her hands together as if seeking stable ground. Lena lifted her hand and slipped the heirloom locket from her finger, the exquisite jewel she'd guarded for so many years. She held it aloft, the deep sapphire gem sparkling like a beacon, and the guests gasped in stunned amazement. "You recall this locket, don't you?" Victor, Lena asked, her tone steady yet pressing. "The Thorne family heirloom, my father Arthur Thorne's final bequest to me before he departed." The room erupted in shocked whispers. The wave of astonishment crashed from guest to guest like an unstoppable tsunami. Victor's face drained of color. His breath grew shallow under the scrutiny of 100 questioning eyes. "Do not heed her falsehoods. It's a fabrication," Victor shouted, attempting to regain control, but the quaver in his voice betrayed his terror. Unfazed, Lena pressed on each word a precise blow to his carefully constructed facade. "My name is Lena Caldwell Thorne, Victor Thorne's half-sister, right here before you. Victor obliterated every trace of me, of my mother, and of my childhood in this very estate, but this locket is undeniable proof of Thorne blood coursing through my veins." Her declaration exploded like a bomb, plunging the room into utter chaos. Those who had mocked her moments ago now stared in a mixture of horror and awe. Eleanor swayed her hand, trembling as she reached for a nearby chair. She looked at her husband with eyes full of doubt and reproach. Victor felt himself propelled into the depths of despair, panic seizing him as he stared at the locket in Lena's hand. He attempted to deny it, voice cracking. "You dare introduce a fake trinket here to defame me? You possess no evidence beyond that worthless bauble." Lena offered a faint, knowing smile and stepped closer to Victor, locking eyes with him in a chilling act of certainty. Victor, you know whether this locket is genuine or not. You know if I speak the truth. I've waited a long time for the opportunity to articulate everything you've perpetrated, and tonight I will no longer remain silent." Victor stumbled back, his mind reeling. His worst nightmare had materialized into reality. The guests' scrutinizing gazes felt like invisible blades slicing through his pride and honor. He turned to Eleanor, his partner for so many years, only to witness her regarding him as if he were a stranger she'd never known. "Victor," Eleanor whispered, her voice choked with pain and disappointment. Lena stood tall in the spotlight, her gaze sweeping across the stunned crowd. "Remember this moment," she declared. "Remember that secrets buried beneath a glittering surface will always claw their way back into the light. Tonight I haven't come merely to reclaim my own dignity, but to expose the full truth about the man who deceived us all, Victor Thorne." Victor froze, utterly lost. The 25 years of lies he'd interred were erupting around him, pushing him to the brink of collapse, and Lena Caldwell Thorne knew with unwavering certainty that her battle had only just begun. The air in the room was thick and icy, almost suffocating. Victor Thorne stood frozen, his eyes wide with panic, as if ensnared in an inescapable nightmare. The crowd's suspicious, accusing stares bore into him more intensely with each passing second, making him feel as though he were sinking into the very mire he himself had created. Lena swept her gaze around the room, sensing the tension reach its zenith. From her elegant clutch, she produced a small audio recorder. Her eyes were cold and resolute as she locked onto Victor. "If you believe I only brought this locket to substantiate my heritage, you're mistaken, Victor. It's taken me 25 years to prepare everything for this juncture." Victor opened his mouth to respond, but found himself speechless. Lena calmly pressed the record button. Immediately, a familiar voice echoed through the speaker, each word a dagger to the hearts of everyone present. Victor's own cold, emotionless voice rang out. "Dr. Ben Carter, you must list my father's cause of death as a cardiac arrest. If you dare mention the mercury levels in his blood, I promise you'll forfeit everything. Do not challenge me." The hall erupted in horrified gasps and murmurs. Victor staggered backward as if struck by a mortal blow, his face ashen, legs trembling. Eleanor clamped her hand over her mouth, eyes wide with shock, staring at the man she had trusted without question. Victor's wealthy cronies hastily backed away, as though mere proximity to him now threatened to stain them with his terrible crime. Victor croaked, "That's fake, Lena. You're framing me?" But Lena's expression remained icy calm. Her voice rang out clear and strong. "Victor, I knew you'd say that. That's why I brought a witness you've threatened for years." At that moment, the grand doors swung open, and in walked Dr. Ben Carter, the Thorne family physician for decades. Gaunt and silver-haired, his lined face bore the weight of long-suppressed guilt. He stepped firmly to the center of the room. Dr. Carter fixed Victor with a look of sorrow and reproach, his voice trembling yet unmistakably honest. "I guarded this secret for 25 years, not because I wished to, but because Victor threatened to destroy my career and my family if I articulated the truth." Victor shook his head in despair, as if denying the cruel reality unfolding. "But Doctor," Carter's next words landed like a final, devastating blow. "Arthur Thorne, father of Lena and Victor, did not perish from a cardiac arrest as we reported. He was slowly poisoned with mercury. Mercury I discovered in his blood. Victor compelled me to falsify the death certificate to conceal this atrocity." Eleanor let out a horrifying scream, collapsing into the nearest chair. Tears streamed down her face as she looked at her husband with a mixture of fury and heartbreak. Victor, now a broken shadow of the proud man who once governed elite society, muttered incoherently, "No, I never meant. It got out of hand. I just wanted—" Lena cut in, her voice as cold as steel. "Money, influence to acquire them. You murdered your own father, plunged my mother and me into destitution, and then observed us suffer for decades." Victor's eyes went blank. The guests recoiled as if he were accursed, avoiding him like the plague. He searched desperately for an ally, but found only looks of disgust and contempt. Lena stepped forward, her words a sharp whisper meant only for him. "Victor, your crime is clearly laid bare. The falsehoods you constructed your life upon have collapsed. Now you will face the consequences of your actions." Victor tried to steady himself, but his legs gave out. He slumped into the nearest chair, eyes vacant despair etched into every line of his face. Standing tall before the stunned audience, Lena addressed them with unwavering authority. Tonight you have witnessed a terrible truth buried for 2 decades. Victor Thorne will answer for his crimes, and I, Lena Caldwell Thorne, will ensure that justice is served." The room fell deathly silent, every eye fixed on Lena. No longer was she a meek cleaning woman, but a symbol of truth, resilience, and courage. The woman who had single-handedly exposed the darkest secret in the Thorne family's history. The air in the room felt thick and icy, nearly suffocating. Victor Thorne stood frozen terror, widening his eyes, as though he'd been trapped in a nightmare he couldn't escape. The crowd's accusing, disbelieving stares bore into him ever more intensely, pulling him down into the dark mire of his own making. Lena paused and took a slow, steady breath, grief and fierce resolve flickering through her eyes. She knew that to see true justice done, she had to unburden the 25 years of suffering she'd carried inside. She scanned the guests, once quick to mock her, and saw shock and horror replace their earlier contempt. Then she spoke, her voice softer now, yet weighted with terrible strength. "Back when my father perished, Victor didn't just poison him with mercury. What he did afterward was far more brutal." Victor trembled, opening his mouth to protest, but Lena's unflinching gaze silenced him. "He seized every penny of the inheritance my father bequeathed for my mother and me. Victor Thorne forged the paperwork, stripped us of our legal rights, and turned everything that was ours into his own." Eleanor, still reeling from the earlier revelations, pressed a hand to her chest, tears brimming in her eyes as she searched her husband's face for denial. But Victor sat there hollow-eyed and defeated, incapable of even a protest. Lena turned her gaze on Eleanor, her tone gentler but laced with deep old sorrow. "Eleanor, do you comprehend why I became the housekeeper in the house where I was raised? Because Victor thrust my mother and me into utter destitution. We were driven so low that we had to solicit a cleaning position in the very manner my father constructed. Our home transformed into a living hell I endured every single day." Gasps of shock swept through the guests. They looked at Lena with sympathy and awe, while their disgust and fury, aimed squarely at Victor, only grew more palpable. Martha Sullivan, who'd mocked Lena moments before, quietly fell back into the crowd, her face pale with disbelief. Cynthia Evans, who'd sneered at Lena's dress, went ashen, as if struck by a moral blow. Lena pressed on her voice, catching with emotion, but still unwavering. "Every day I scoured these floors. I faced the memory of my father and the memories of the happiness Victor callously destroyed. He made me toil in my own father's house to revel in his twisted triumph and absolute power." Victor struggled to stand, his face drained of color, desperation leaking into his voice. "No, that's not. I never meant to. Never meant to." Lena's eyes flashed with contempt, her words sharp as knives. "You forced my mother to slave away until her last breath, merely so you could keep me in school. She succumbed to illness and despair without even adequate funds for her medication. All because of you, Victor." A stunned hush fell over the room, broken only by whispered expressions of outrage and betrayal. The atmosphere grew so heavy with revulsion that it felt like a physical weight pressing down on everyone present. No one could believe that the polished, powerful man they once admired could be so monstrous. Eleanor collapsed into her chair, sobbing uncontrollably. The trust she'd placed in Victor shattered like fragile glass. Around them, former friends and allies recoiled, as if Victor himself were a contagion they couldn't risk catching. Lena stepped forward again, her voice low, yet commanding. "Victor, you've spent your life trampling others to ascend to the pinnacle. But genuine strength doesn't derive from cruelty and power. It stems from courage and justice, something you lost long ago." Victor opened his mouth to speak, but no words came. He glanced around, realizing at last that every eye in the room had turned away from him. Lena turned to face the assembled guests, her tone soft but resolute. "I desire everyone here tonight to comprehend that behind wealth and power there can reside horrors beyond imagination, and justice is never too tardy, even when it demands 25 years to be rendered." Her words echoed through the grand hall, a powerful warning reverberating in every heart. From that moment on, none of the guests would ever look at Victor Thorne the same way again. In their eyes, he was no longer the elegant titan they'd admired, but a criminal laid bare by the light of truth. The atmosphere in the grand hall felt as if it had frozen solid under the weight of Lena's declaration. Victor Thorne sat motionless, as though everything inside him had collapsed. The guests around him kept their distance, their eyes full of disgust and fear, consigning him to utter isolation and despair. But Lena knew this wasn't sufficient. True justice required more than an accusation. She needed irrefutable proof. And now, before all of Willow Creek's high society, she would execute the final decisive step of the plan she'd spent 2 decades preparing. Lena lightly nodded toward the main doors. They swung open to reveal 2 figures every guest recognized: renowned investigative journalist Sophia Reed, sharp-minded and fearless, and celebrated attorney David Miller, famed for his integrity and his record of prosecuting powerful figures. Sophia Reed strode in her cropped brown hair and steely gaze commanding immediate respect. David Miller followed, clutching a thick dossier. Together they took their place beside Lena in the center of the room, facing Victor. Victor leapt to his feet in alarm, his voice trembling. What are you doing here?" Sophia said nothing to him. She studied him coolly, then turned to Lena, accepting a small remote control. Her voice rang out clear and authoritative. "Ladies and gentlemen, at the request of Lena Caldwell Thorne first and attorney David Miller are here today to present the definitive comprehensive evidence of the serious financial crimes Victor Thorne has committed over the past 25 years. Sophia pressed a button. The large screen behind them lit up, displaying documents and images that left the audience stunned. Clear bank records appeared showing Victor diverting millions of dollars from the Thorne Charity Fund and corporate accounts into his personal coffers. Her voice continued each word as precise as a legal indictment. These are bank statements proving Victor Thorne secretly transferred over $30 million from the Thorne Charitable Foundation into his personal accounts. These transactions were masked by fabricated charitable disbursements that never existed. The guests went pale, unable to believe what they saw. Eleanor trembled, her tears flowing freely as she realized her husband, once above reproach, was a cold-blooded criminal and liar. Victor's stammered eyes wild, lunging toward Sophia as if to seize the remote. "Stop this. It's slander. You're fabricating everything." David Miller stepped forward, blocking him. His voice was firm and unyielding. "Mr. Thorne, I strongly advise you not to act rashly. All of this evidence is legal and has been fully verified by financial regulators and federal law enforcement." Victor staggered back, legs shaking. Sophia advanced the presentation, playing additional audio. Victor's own calm, chilling voice negotiating bribes to silence officials and cover up embezzlement and tax evasion. "If they want to stay quiet, just pay them. Don't let this leak, or I'll forfeit everything." The guests recoiled in horror. Those who had once supported Victor hung their heads, ashamed to meet each other's eyes. Cynthia Evans and Martha Sullivan, the women who had ridiculed Lena, now glanced at one another in trembling disbelief. Sophia concluded her presentation with solemn resolve. "All of this evidence has been forwarded to the proper authorities. Victor Thorne will face multiple criminal charges, including embezzlement of charitable funds, bribery, tax fraud, and obstruction of justice." Lena stepped forward, her voice gentle yet unflinching. "Victor, you spent your life hiding behind lies and crime, believing power and money could shield you. But you were wrong. The truth always comes to light, no matter how deeply it's buried." Victor's eyes welled with tears, his voice choking. "Lena, please forgive me. I never meant for things to escalate this far." Lena's gaze hardened, her eyes blazing with the fire of justice. "Victor, you don't deserve forgiveness from me or anyone else. Everything that transpired today is the consequence of your own choices, and I will never let justice be forgotten again." Victor slumped to the floor, utterly defeated. The guests looked at him with contempt and profound disappointment. In that moment, Victor Thorne's career honor and power evaporated. Lena's final blow had landed, and the full truth was finally laid bare. Lena's steadfast declaration rang like a death knell, extinguishing the last spark of hope in Victor's mind. In that moment, he completely lost control, his bloodshot eyes darting around the room like a wounded animal desperate to escape the trap he himself had set. Lena Victor's voice trembled, weak and desperate, stripped of all authority and power. "Please stop. I know I was wrong. You have everything you ever wanted." Lena met his gaze with a cold, sorrowful look at the broken man she'd once called brother. "Everything I wanted, Victor, all I ever wanted was justice. Justice you usurped from my mother and me. And today, justice will not be denied by your belated pleas." Victor spun toward Eleanor, eyes begging for the last support from the wife he'd shared so many years with. But all he found was her pained, furious stare. eyes brimming with tears and hatred. She spoke in a quivering voice of anguish. "Victor, I spent my life trusting and supporting you, and now I discover I've lived alongside a murderer and a monster. You've transmuted my life and our children's into a monstrous falsehood." He lunged toward her, clutching her hand, voice choked with despair. "Eleanor, please try to comprehend. I never intended for any of this to happen. I only desired to protect our family." Eleanor yanked her hand away as if he were a filthy thing. She stepped back, tears streaming down her anguish-filled face, her tone steely with resolve. "You have no right to speak of family, Victor. You destroyed everything we ever possessed. And right now, I'm summoning the police. You must atone for the crimes you've committed." Eleanor's words sounded like the final bell, ending Victor's last hopes. He stood frozen, pleading with his eyes, but every wealthy guest who once fawned over him now turned their back faces cold with contempt. Tension spiked as police sirens wailed outside. A squad of officers swept into the hall, led by Chief Miller, famed for investigating Willow Creek's most sensational crimes. Victor Thorne, Chief Miller announced in a firm, clear voice, "You are under arrest for the suspected murder of your father, Arthur Thorne, embezzlement of charitable funds, bribery, and tax fraud. You have the right to remain silent, but anything you say may be used against you in court." Panicked Victor resisted, but officers quickly subdued him. The guests murmured and scrambled away, eager to distance themselves from the criminal spectacle unfolding before them. At that moment, the doors crashed open again, and a swarm of reporters flooded in, cameras and microphones thrust forward. Flashbulbs popped relentlessly, capturing Victor's desponding, defeated face. Once an icon of power and wealth, now reduced to a pitiful figure in police custody. "Mr. Thorne, any comment on these charges of patricide and financial fraud?" a reporter shouted. Victor tried to hide his face. His lips quivered, but no words came. Reporters pressed him with questions as they broadcast the chaotic scene live. Guests hastily slipped out, unwilling to have their names tied to the largest scandal in Willow Creek's high society. Eleanor stood trembling in a corner, pain etched across her face, yet she held her head high and stared Victor down one final time. "I hope you spend the remainder of your life reflecting on what you perpetrated, Victor." Lena stood calmly as Victor was led away in utter humiliation. His steps faltered, strength drained while cameras and microphones swarmed him, forcing him to confront the harshest truth of his life. When the great doors finally closed behind him, Lena felt a strange lightness in her chest. She knew she had honored her promise to her mother and secured justice for her father. And most importantly, she had shattered forever the web of lies Victor used to manipulate everyone. Standing alone in the vast hall, Lena realized something profound. Victor had lost far more than freedom or money. He'd lost everything of true value, honor, affection, and the respect of those dearest to him. That was the recompense he'd pay for his avarice, cruelty, and terrible choices. Lena turned back to the remaining guests, her voice calm but powerful. "Remember this moment. The truth, no matter how profoundly interred, will always prevail. And anyone who chooses to live in falsehoods and injustice will one day face their own downfall precisely as Victor Thorne has tonight." A hush fell over the grand hall, a solemn testament to the undeniable power of truth and justice. When the great doors closed behind Victor, the entire hall fell into a profound silence. Lena's eyes followed his retreating figure, and in her chest she felt a strange calm, tempered by a weight of sorrow. In that moment she understood that the victory she had just achieved was not a cause for celebration, but simply the restoration of justice to its rightful place, a place Victor had usurped for far too long. In the days that followed, the Victor Thorne case dominated headlines and national news broadcasts. The trial moved swiftly, yet was fraught with tension. Each piece of evidence laid bare, shocking the public with the depth of Victor's cruelty, cunning, and cold-blooded greed. In the witness stand, his once arrogant facade fell away. He was gaunt, hollow-eyed, utterly broken by the judgment of both the law and his own conscience. After fierce deliberations, the verdict was delivered under the watchful eye of millions of Americans. Victor Thorne was sentenced to life in prison for premeditated murder, large-scale financial fraud, bribery, and corruption. All of his illicit assets were seized by the government to compensate his victims, most notably Lena Caldwell Thorne, who had borne the greatest losses and endured the deepest wounds over the past 2.5 decades. As the judge pronounced the sentence, Victor remained motionless in the defendant's chair, head bowed, shoulders trembling with helplessness. This was the final reckoning for the path he had chosen, a path paved with greed, deceit, and violence, now ending in the loss of everything he once held dear. In the aftermath, Eleanor Thorne filed for divorce and relocated her children far from Willow Creek. She vowed never again to utter the Thorne name, which had become for her a symbol of betrayal and pain. For her part, Lena received countless interview requests from major media outlets. Yet rather than hold a triumphant press conference, she opted for a small gathering at David Miller's law office, her steadfast ally throughout the pursuit of justice. Before the camera lenses, Lena appeared simply dressed, yet radiantly composed. Her voice rang clear, each word resonating in the hearts of her listeners. "I want everyone to comprehend one thing. My motive was never retribution. The suffering my mother and I endured cannot be alleviated by inflicting the same pain on another." She paused, her eyes shining with quiet conviction. "What I have always sought is justice." For 25 years, Victor Thorne believed that power and money could shield him from accountability. Today, he and all of us learned a vital lesson. No one stands above the truth. Reporters listened in respectful silence, captivated by the sincerity and strength in her words. Sophia Reed, the journalist who helped expose the truth, offered an admiring nod. David Miller stood proudly at her side, witnessing the woman's courageous fulfillment of her mission. Lena continued, her tone softer now, but brimming with compassion and wisdom. "I hope my story serves as a reminder to us all. Justice may arrive late, but it always arrives even when buried beneath layers of lies. Victor Thorne is not the only one in our society to misuse power, but his downfall stands as proof that no one escapes the consequences of their actions." She looked directly into the camera, her voice gentle yet resolute. "What I seek now is to rebuild what was lost, to help those still suffering injustice, and to show that true strength lies not in vengeance, but in the unwavering pursuit of justice." The interview ended amid unanimous respect from everyone present. Lena's humane, profound message spread rapidly, elevating her into a powerful symbol of resilience and dignity. Across the nation, people voiced deep admiration for the woman once underestimated who rose up through nothing but the power of truth. That evening, alone in her quiet room, Lena gazed at a photograph of her parents on the desk. A gentle smile crossed her lips as she felt certain that at last they could rest in peace. Their lives and their suffering would no longer be forgotten or in vain. And as dusk settled outside her window, Lena vowed that her fight for justice was only beginning. She would continue to live and act with courage, compassion, and honor, proving that even in the darkest times, truth and conscience can guide us back to where we belong. In the months following that tumultuous trial, Lena refused to rest or take solace in her victory. Instead, she immediately embarked on a new journey, determined to rebuild the Thorne Corporation from the ashes Victor had left behind. When Lena first stepped into Victor's old office at the company headquarters, the room where he once made those ruthless, ambitious decisions, she felt as though she'd entered an entirely alien world. Those four walls had borne witness to countless schemes, unchecked ambition, and lies. Now they would witness a rebirth, one founded on entirely different core values. Lena convened a meeting with the senior leadership team, a mix of longtime Thorne executives and fresh, enthusiastic newcomers. In that meeting, her voice was calm, yet authoritative, as she declared, "From today forward, the Thorne Corporation will no longer stand for greed or blind power. We will rebuild from the ground up, and this time our growth will be built on transparency, compassion, and social responsibility." The leadership team listened with deep respect, knowing she had fought tirelessly for truth. For any lingering skeptics, Lena offered not threats, but a new style of leadership, one that was both compassionate and decisive. She immediately launched a sweeping transformation unseen in Thorne's history. Fair wages and enhanced benefits were rolled out across the board, and the toxic culture of the past was replaced with one of support and respect. Lena spent hours each day listening to employees' concerns and aspirations, fostering an atmosphere of trust and unity. But she didn't stop there. She created major scholarship funds for workers' children, ensuring no child would suffer the same deprivation and injustice she once endured. She established community aid programs, funding startups and initiatives led by society's most vulnerable people Victor had long ignored or actively marginalized. Every one of Lena's decisions was guided by ethics, something Victor had never valued. She believed that a truly great and sustainable company must be built on fairness, empathy, and social responsibility. In just 6 months, these policies yielded results beyond anyone's expectations. The Thorne Corporation not only recovered from its catastrophic scandal, but also achieved record-breaking profits, surpassing the days when Victor was at the helm. Even more remarkable, this financial success came not from exploitation or oppression, but from the spirit of collaboration and trust that Lena had inspired. The media hailed Thorne as a model of corporate renewal. Business magazines put Lena Caldwell Thorne on their covers, calling her the symbol of a new generation of leaders, ones who put people and justice above personal gain. At a celebration ceremony marking the company's achievements, Lena stood on stage before employees and partners who'd stood by her through the hardships. Her eyes shone with pride and hope as she addressed the crowd. "I want to thank each of you for believing in our journey. Today's success isn't mine alone. It's proof of the power of unity, compassion, and shared responsibility." In the audience, hundreds of faces looked up at her with admiration and unwavering trust. After years spent in the shadow of greed and power, they had found light in Lena's leadership. "I also want to remind you," she continued, her voice sincere, "that ethical values aren't optional. They're a responsibility each of us must carry. We've shown that a company can succeed without sacrificing conscience or integrity." Applause thundered through the hall, brimming with pride and emotion. No one in that room remembered Victor with fear or disdain anymore. They remembered that Lena had given them a future worth believing in. Looking out at her team, Lena felt as if she could see her parents in every employee's eyes, the eyes of people who'd long suffered injustice, now restored to their rightful place in society. She smiled softly, knowing that this was true victory. Not the downfall of an enemy, but the restoration of fairness, compassion, and dignity. From the ruins Victor left behind, Lena had forged a brand new legacy, one built on resilience, honor, and empathy. She knew her journey was far from over, but she also knew she was on the right path. Ahead of her lay the enduring light of justice, humanity, and truth. After that memorable ceremony, Lena returned to her new home, a place where she chose to rebuild her life, free from the haunting memories of the past. This new space was nothing like the cold opulence of the old Thorne Manor. Instead, it was warm and simple, a home where love and kindness filled every corner. In the living room, the 2 orphaned children she'd recently adopted sat side by side doing homework. Little Maya, with her soft curls and wide, curious eyes, and her older brother Elias, always serious and thoughtful, as though he'd grown up too fast. When Lena entered, they both looked up, their faces lighting with joy and trust at the sight of their new mother. Mom's home, Maya squealed, racing forward to hug Lena, while Elias offered a gentle, grateful smile. Moments like these filled Lena's heart with warmth and peace. It was in these small moments that she realized her fight for justice wasn't just a personal mission. It was a purpose to create a better future for the next generation. Every evening, Lena spent time sharing her life story with Maya and Elias, not to fuel anger or hatred, but to impart lessons of forgiveness, social justice, and each person's inner strength. She emphasized that compassion and forgiveness are humanity's greatest powers, stronger than any wealth or authority. A few months later, Lena received a letter from prison, bearing the unmistakable handwriting of Victor Thorne. Holding the letter, her heart raced. The man who'd stolen her childhood and happiness was finally confronting the truth and the loneliness of his own choices. She opened it slowly. Inside, Victor's shaky handwriting conveyed his despair and remorse. "Lena, I know I no longer deserve any forgiveness from you, but I want you to know that my days in prison have shown me the enormity of my mistakes. I don't expect you to forget the past, only to forgive me so I can find some peace before the end. I deeply regret the pain I caused you and our mother. I sincerely hope you find the happiness I could never give you, Victor." Lena laid the letter on the table and gazed out the window, her eyes distant. She chose not to reply, not out of lingering hatred, but because she understood that her best path forward was not to dwell on the past, but to look toward the future, a future where good values would never again be buried by power or greed. The next day, Lena spoke at Maya and Elias's school. Facing hundreds of eager young faces, she shared her life journey with heartfelt simplicity. "My dears, in life, you may face injustice, hurt, even betrayal. But the most important thing isn't revenge or winning at all costs. True victory is when you refuse to let that pain turn you into someone like the one who harmed you. Her voice fell softer, drawing them in. It took me years to learn that the best way to overcome injustice is to create something good, to become the best version of yourself. You must learn to forgive, not because others deserve it, but because you deserve peace and happiness. The children listened, eyes shining with admiration and resolve. Elias offered a proud smile while Maya looked at her mother with teary wonder. Their faith in her was Lena's greatest motivation to continue her chosen path, one of justice and unconditional kindness. In the community, Lena quickly became a powerful symbol of resilience, compassion, and human dignity. She was often invited to speak at forums, universities, and social organizations. Her life story inspired countless people who'd suffered injustice, helping them find strength and hope. One peaceful afternoon, as she sat on the front steps watching Maya and Elias play in the yard, Lena smiled inwardly, feeling a deep serenity she'd once thought unattainable. It was then she understood that the greatest legacy she could leave the next generation was compassion, resilience, and an unwavering belief in the power of goodness. Looking up at the clear blue sky, she whispered as if sending a final message to her parents. "Mom, Dad, I kept my promise. Not through revenge or bitterness, but by building a world where goodness is nurtured and protected, where justice is no longer a distant dream." And there, in the warm glow of a late afternoon, Lena knew her journey had truly come full circle, and that a new journey brimming with hope lay just ahead. And so, as the warm glow of late afternoon settled, Lena knew her journey had truly come full circle, and that a new path brimming with hope lay just ahead. Her profound sense of peace was not a sign of rest, but a quiet strength that fueled an even grander vision for the future. The Thorn Corporation, now a beacon of ethical enterprise under her leadership, became the foundation for this next chapter. Lena expanded its initiatives globally, transforming it from a symbol of past greed into a paradigm of conscious capitalism. She launched divisions dedicated to sustainable technology, investing in renewable energy solutions and eco-friendly manufacturing processes, ensuring that the company's prosperity contributed to the planet's well-being, not its exploitation. She also spearheaded affordable housing projects in underserved communities, recognizing that dignity began with a safe, stable home, and established educational centers that provided vocational training and literacy programs directly combating the cycles of destitution she herself had known. Every business decision was now filtered through a lens of social impact, proving that profit and purpose could coexist, even thrive in harmony. Beyond the corporate realm, Lena solidified her commitment to social justice on a broader scale. The scholarship funds she initiated for employees' children blossomed into the Arthur and Eleanor Thorne Foundation for Justice and Equity, named in quiet tribute to her parents and the mother of Victor's children, acknowledging their shared pain and the legacy of truth she now championed. This foundation provided comprehensive legal aid to victims of corporate fraud and malfeasance, ensuring that no one, regardless of their financial standing, would ever again suffer in silence, as her family once had. It also funded investigative journalism initiatives empowering fearless reporters like Sophia Reed to continue uncovering hidden truths and holding the powerful accountable. Lena became a sought-after speaker, transcending the role of a mere CEO to become a global ambassador for ethical leadership. From the grand halls of international summits to intimate community gatherings, her story resonated, inspiring countless individuals to seek justice, cultivate compassion, and find their own inner strength, transforming her personal triumph into a universal message of hope and resilience. At home, Lena's devotion to Maya and Elias deepened with each passing day. She nurtured their curiosity, encouraged their empathy, and armed them with the understanding that true power lay in kindness and integrity, not material wealth or dominion over others. Their home became a haven, not just for them, but for other children in need, as Lena quietly expanded her family, fostering young ones from challenging backgrounds, offering them the love, stability, and education she believed every child deserved. She taught them that the most potent legacy was not what one amassed, but what one gave back to the world, how one shaped it for the better. She even initiated a mentorship program within the Thorn Corporation, pairing experienced employees with at-risk youth, guiding them not just in professional skills, but in life lessons, fostering a new generation of leaders grounded in ethics and social responsibility. Lena's days were no longer marked by the quiet anticipation of uncovering secrets, but by the joyful, active pursuit of building a world where such secrets would have no place to hide. She understood that justice was not a singular event, but a continuous journey, a collective effort requiring vigilance, empathy, and unwavering resolve. Her forgiveness of Victor was a quiet internal act, a liberation of her own spirit, rather than a concession to his plea, allowing her to pour all her energy into constructive positive change. She lived each day by the powerful credo she had whispered to her parents in the Twilight Building, a world where goodness was nurtured and protected, where justice was not a distant dream, but a lived reality for all. This was Lena Caldwell Thorne's enduring legacy, a tapestry woven with threads of truth, compassion, and the indomitable human spirit shining as a guiding light for generations to come. And so, as the final light of Lena's story settles around us, we are left not with the echoes of triumph, but with the quiet, enduring whisper of what it truly means to heal and to build. The journey of Lena Caldwell Thorne is a profound testament to the gentle yet unyielding power of truth, a lesson that resonated through the grand halls of the Thorne estate and beyond, touching countless lives with its quiet strength. It reminds us that no matter how deep the shadows may fall, how long the wait for justice, or how immense the betrayal, the truest form of power resides not in external might or accumulated wealth, but in the unwavering ability to remain true to oneself. It is the power of self-respect, the deep wellspring of courage, and an inner strength that, like a deeply rooted oak, never bends before the fiercest winds of adversity. Lena's story shows us with beautiful clarity that the greatest strength is not found in controlling others or in wielding power over them, but in the profound capacity to maintain one's own integrity, resilience, and calm even in the face of life's most daunting challenges. Her path teaches us that healing is a choice, and that the ultimate victory lies in transforming pain into purpose, bitterness into compassion. It's about taking the broken pieces of a shattered past and with gentle hands and a resolute heart, weaving them into a tapestry of renewal and hope. We saw how Lena rebuilt not just a company, but a legacy nurturing goodness, fostering empathy, and creating a world where fairness could truly blossom for those who needed it most. Her adoption of Maya and Elias, her dedication to teaching them the values of forgiveness and justice, truly underscores that the greatest power each person can attain is the power to guide themselves, to choose kindness, and to build a future illuminated by the very values they embody. And what about you, dear listener, as you reflect on Lena's incredible journey? What quiet insights has her unwavering spirit kindled within your own heart? Perhaps her story invites us to consider a moment in our lives where we faced a difficult choice between holding on to bitterness and embracing a path of peace and construction. How might we, in our own everyday lives, nurture the seeds of truth, compassion, and courage that Lena so beautifully demonstrated? In what small yet significant ways can we contribute to building a world where justice is not just a distant dream, but a lived reality woven into the fabric of our communities? If Lena's enduring spirit and profound message have resonated with you, if her journey has offered a glimmer of hope or a moment of reflection, we gently invite you to share your thoughts in the comments below. Let us know which part of her story touched you most deeply, or what lessons you'll carry forward from her journey. And if this narrative has moved you, consider sharing this video with friends and family who might also find solace and inspiration in its message. Join our growing community by subscribing to the channel. Your support helps us continue to share stories of resilience, empathy, and positive change, spreading these timeless values to even more hearts around the world. Thank you from the deepest part of our hearts for being with us on this journey of discovery and reflection.
Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.